Trump shocked everyone. Negotiations took place in Saudi Arabia. Are they really abandoning Ukraine? Did Putin and Trump manage to come to an agreement? The Russian army is in shambles. The elite 155th Marine Brigade of the Russian Federation was wiped out in the Kharkiv region. There's not a trace left of the entire column. NATO troops are entering Ukraine. Britain shocked everyone. All of this and more in our segment ahead. Hotspot? Trump keeps shocking everyone with his decisions more and more. The dialogue between the US and Russia was shocking. In the statements made in Saudi Arabia, there was something interesting. Zelensky reacted strongly to what's happening. Ukraine is irreversibly losing territory. Trump is ready to deploy troops. And Putin, in a panic, is once again talking about the illegitimacy of the Ukrainian president. About the main topic next.
The negotiations have already begun. Negotiations between the American delegation and representatives of the aggressor country Russia have started in the capital of Saudi Arabia. As we know, a way to determine whether the Russians' intentions are serious and if they are on the same page as the US regarding the cessation of the war in Ukraine.
The meeting in Saudi Arabia, Mathus, is extremely significant because the first stage, which is important for Putin, is a call. He received it. Now, there's a meeting at the command level. By the way, the representation is quite high, both from Russia and the United States. He received that too. Yes, this meeting is just a probe. There is no problem with this meeting. It's a global betrayal, but at the same time, this is just the first round.
A representative of the Russian delegation, Dmitriev, believes that progress in the negotiations between Russia and the US is possible in the next 2 to 3 months.
Let's be honest, progress is already visible. In fact, it's Putin. Dmitriev is being disingenuous because Putin is already in seventh heaven because he has contact with Trump 2 to 3 months. Yes, indeed. It's possible that the dialogue will become more relevant because at the very least Ukraine will be involved and Ukraine will insist on the participation of our European partners.
For his part, Zelensky states that Ukraine knew nothing about it, so it is not participating in the negotiations.
And Ukraine views any negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine as having no results. We cannot recognize any things or agreements about us without us. And we will not recognize such agreements. There's probably a bilateral track there, and the US has the right to do so if they have bilateral issues.
But regardless of what Russia and the US agree on, the European Commission stated that it will not lift sanctions against Russia, even if the US does. The Union will implement its own sanctions policy and introduce the 16th package of sanctions, which will affect Russia's energy sector.
But we, on our side and on the side of the EU, have several packages. We are currently discussing the 16th package, which will also impact the energy sector, and which will contribute to the gradual cessation of our fossil fuel imports from Russia.
It is difficult to say whether such negotiations will have any impact on Russia since they continue to talk complete nonsense. The permanent representative of Russia to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, stated that Ukraine has irretrievably lost the territories occupied by Russia and must concede even more of its regions.
This indicates that yes, Russia, in such a demonstrative and completely inadequate position, is trying to raise the stakes and shows its dissatisfaction with the current state of the dialogue. So on one hand, it's a paradoxical situation where it seems that the Russians are satisfied with the direction things are taking, the dialogue aspect, so to speak. But on the other hand, they haven't received anything yet.
So what about peacekeepers in Ukraine? European countries have repeatedly stated that they are ready to send their troops, but they still haven't come to a unified decision. Although a group of European countries is quietly working on a plan, sending troops to Ukraine to help ensure any future peace agreement with Russia.
I will not go into details of the possibilities, but I agree that if there is to be peace, then there must be some kind of security guarantee for Ukraine. And the UK will play its role in this.
It is known that the UK, France, and Northern European countries support the idea of sending peacekeepers to Ukraine once a ceasefire is established. The Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, has stated outright that London is ready to send its troops to Ukraine to ensure the implementation of a peace agreement. Sweden is also not ruling out the possibility of sending its troops.
This all carries political risks. So now there is so much, well, let's say deep dialogue, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of different kinds of dissatisfaction. But there is a positive signal here. It's still in the fact that now they are already truthfully talking in Europe about all these risks, and there are countries that understand the whole perspective, and that help is needed. Ukraine needs it right now.
Meanwhile, while the first session of the bilateral talks in Saudi Arabia has concluded, Zelensky is holding his bilateral meeting with Erdogan in Turkey to discuss the resolution of the war in Ukraine. There's also a possibility of a meeting between Putin and Trump, which could take place in Saudi Arabia as early as next week.
Are Western troops entering Ukraine? Britain has shocked everyone, so Kyiv might be offered a strong alternative to joining NATO. What commitments are Western partners ready to take on, and who is already prepared to send their troops to Ukrainian soil? In the midst of a brutal war, these decisions could change the course of history. Details in our report.
While the new U.S. administration is enthusiastically organizing global talks to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, European partners are seriously concerned about the issue. Significant and reliable security guarantees for Ukrainians. The White House agrees that the security of Ukraine should primarily be the responsibility of European countries. So what should these guarantees be like to avoid becoming just as useless a piece of paper as the infamous Budapest Memorandum?
There are two fundamental positions. The first position is that it is extremely important for us to ensure so that Russia does not have the opportunity to attack Ukraine in the future. Because such conditions will persist, and we understand that such risks will be present for a long time. And in this context, developing a formula for either the country's accession to NATO or the deployment of foreign troops on Ukrainian territory, troops, weapons, forces, and resources to support us is crucial.
In the near future, Ukraine will not be able to join NATO. And the North Atlantic Alliance won't be able to deploy its troops as a peacekeeping contingent along the line of demarcation. Russia categorically disagrees with this. The option of deploying troops from certain European countries is quite a likely scenario, military analysts say.
The only possible option for deploying peacekeepers, I want to emphasize again, is bilateral agreements between Ukraine and the countries, and with each individual country. But again, there's one nuance here. Article 17 of the Constitution of Ukraine, which prohibits the placement of foreign military bases on Ukrainian territory, and accordingly the deployment of peacekeepers means permanent deployment points, that is, these are bases.
Such options have already been discussed by the top leaders of the old world. Yes, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, stated that he is ready and willing to send his country's troops to ensure any peace agreement.
But this also means the readiness and willingness to contribute to ensuring the security guarantees for Ukraine by deploying our own troops on the ground if necessary. I'm not saying this lightly. I feel a deep sense of responsibility regarding the potential threat to British servicemen.
Sweden's Foreign Minister Maria Malmer also spoke about the possible deployment of their military contingent. She stated that the country does not rule out sending peacekeeping troops to Ukraine if necessary.
Right now, we need to first agree on a fair and sustainable peace that respects international law. When we have such a peace, it will need to be maintained, and for that our government is not ruling anything out.
Earlier, the French side also spoke about the peacekeeping contingent. In general, we're talking about a little over 100,000 peacekeepers from different countries. Meanwhile, Russia's mobilization resource is about 15 million people, and this number far exceeds the capabilities of Ukraine and our partners. So, the main security guarantees for Ukraine are modern high-tech weapons of domestic production, plus assistance from European partners.
At the moment, the Ukrainian defense industry can meet the needs of Ukraine's defense forces at about 30%. It's precisely this factor, unfortunately, that is also a fifth column, which our strategic partners are pressuring, fully understanding that the lack of external military technical assistance to Ukraine will be quite problematic. So it's about developing our own army to increase its capabilities, what the president is talking about. But in parallel, first of all, we must clearly understand that this is a war. This is a war of technology. That is, we can defeat the Russian Federation not with the number of personnel, but with high-tech types of weapons.
uninterrupted and large-scale supplies of arms, generous investments in the Ukrainian defense industry, and a contingent of foreign peacekeepers. These are the three pillars on which reliable international guarantees should be based, ensuring that Ukrainians do not feel deceived or abandoned in their fierce struggle for the security of the entire European continent.
And while the West decides whether to send troops, the Russians launched a desperate assault in Kursk with a column of tanks under red flags. And they just charged right through the minefield and under attack from the Ukrainian swarm of drones. But the elite 155th Marine Brigade couldn't make it anywhere. To see how our fighters gave them a fiery welcome, check out the report.
The Russians launched another assault in Kursk against the 47th Brigade and its allies. The released footage shows how the FPV drones of the Ukrainian defenders deliver precise strikes, on enemy equipment. To make the picture more beautiful, the elite Marines, remembering 1945, hung victory flags on the tank. As a result, the elite Russian 155th Marine Brigade did not even reach the first line of defense. The tanks and infantry took a devastating hit from the Ukrainian FPV drones and the 47th Brigade Magura.
The 155th column under red flags. Like in a parade, they went head-on into a swarm of drones along a mined road. Don't rub your eyes. We wrote everything correctly. Right under the red victory flags. And right along the mined road. This isn't just planning mistakes, it's betrayal and murder.
The enemy lost more than a dozen tanks and a company of soldiers.
The crazy grandpas ordered the victory flags to be raised on the equipment, after which they sent the column straight into the minefield, under the strikes of thousands of FPV drones, in the Kursk region. And now they've released a video showing the destruction of this red-flagged column. This is some kind of disgrace.
The Z channels have finally received a response. The commanders once again blamed everything on foreign intelligence services, without mentioning the disastrous operation at all. What is it known for? The 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet. It is known for its brutality and war crimes. In 1922, it was this brigade that participated in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In March 1922, during an attempt to advance on the village of Moshun in the Kiev region, the Marine Corps of the Russian Federation lost at least 21 occupiers, most of whom were from the 155th Brigade. That was a cool and bold way to describe the battle. 55th, Putin.
Wow. Indeed. Marines are from the Far East. They fight coolly, skillfully, and boldly.
Putin's words turned out to be lies again, and heroism became a farce.
The equipment burned by the enemy on the way here, is that also you're doing? Yes. Yes.
The Russian Federation constantly sends the Marine Brigade into local assaults under the watchful eyes of snipers. They were mentioned by Russian propagandists in their telegram channels. The soldiers wrote letters calling for help. It's true for nothing.
The 155th Brigade has already been reinforced 3 times. The first time after Irpin and Bucha. The second time they were defeated near Donetsk. They have recovered again, and now almost the entire brigade has been destroyed near Ugledar.
The 155th Brigade was made up of 80-90% mobilized troops in 2023 in the battles near Ugledar. After yet another assault, only about 8 people are left from the assault brigade. Many, they were captured, called for, the 155th Marine Brigade. Called for the 155th Marine Brigade.
The 155th Marine Brigade has arrived.
So the restored brigade was losing about 100 people a day for 4 days.
Those who survived said they were deserters. I would have been better off getting captured and not coming back. The attitude is as bad as it can get. They've already lost about 500 people. Maybe more.
Propagandist war correspondents criticize the Russian commanders who once again failed a military operation. They say they planned the offensive to earn bonuses from the chief of the General Staff Gerasimov and to get the title of Hero of Russia. There is no doubt that the objectives will be achieved. After the start of the Ukrainian Armed Forces operation in the Kursk region, units of the 155th Brigade, Basa, were redeployed here to the Kursk direction.
After we arrived, the enemy already... I didn't feel as comfortable as I used to. And when I found out that she came here, the 155th Brigade just stopped. Some kind of shooting skirmishes with us, join.
They continued their crimes, already on the territory of Russia.
If it weren't for the drones, we would have kicked their butts a long time ago. Somewhere far away just for themselves.
So over time, the enemy won't hold out? On August 24, 2024, a video surfaced online showing Russian soldiers from the 155th Brigade beheading a Ukrainian prisoner of war. On January 23rd, a video was released showing the 155th Brigade shooting 6 Ukrainian soldiers. At the end of January, Russian Marines and thugs surrendered in the SPU in the Kursk region.
There's nothing good about war. Don't come here, don't sign those contracts. This won't lead to anything good. You'll either be 300 or 200. There's no way back from here. I was lucky to have been captured.
At that time, the 155th Separate Brigade of the Pacific Fleet Marine Corps was awarded the Suvorov Order. With words of gratitude for everything he has done for the people, already at the beginning of February, Putin agreed to name the Marines of the 155th Brigade in honor of Kursk. Of course, if it comes from, them, of course. Their request will be satisfied. After all the defeats, assaults, and captivity, Putin's words about how the Far Eastern Marines really fight coolly, competently, and daringly sound funny.
So the legendary Marines of the 155th Brigade of the Pacific Fleet are currently moving towards our common victory, pushing forward and reclaiming the lands of my native Kursk region. And the enemy knows that the Varangians do not retreat?
The Russian 155th Marine Brigade. It can confidently earn the title of the most unsuccessful formation during the full-scale war against Ukraine.
Hellish battles at the front, the armed forces of Ukraine are grinding the enemy to dust. The Russian army tried to break through our defenses in Donbass. Ukrainian heroes destroyed the entire column of occupiers. Unique footage of real battles. The losses were shocking. The situation is explosive in Russia. The situation in the Bryansk region is becoming increasingly tense. It's time for the Russians to pack their bags and run, just like they know how to. Get the latest details next.
In the Kharkiv direction near Volchansk, the invading army continues its unsuccessful assault actions using armored vehicles to attack Ukrainian positions. This is reported by the Operational Strategic Group of Troops Khortytsia. Ukrainian warriors managed to push back the Russian soldiers, and the FPV drone operators were able to destroy 2 armored vehicles and damage another one. Enemy forces were also destroyed. The enemy and the remnants of the surviving infantry were hit by strike drones. At the same time, in the Kupiansk direction, Russian occupiers attacked Ukrainian positions near Petropavlivka, Pishanove, Zarizove, and Lozova. Fighting took place in the Lviv region near the settlements of Kopanki, Makeyevka, and Novolyubivka. In the Turetsky direction, the Russian army tried to break through the Ukrainian defenses in the areas of Krymske, Toretsk, and Sherbinivka. Fierce clashes also took place in the Pokrovsk direction. The invaders wanted to push the Ukrainian warriors back, particularly near Tarasivka, Malinivka, Promen, Novoalexandrovka, Alexeyevka, and Ulakli, but they were unsuccessful.
Putin is gradually realizing his offensive potential, and as a result, he is losing the ability to launch his offensive actions as dynamically as he did before. As for the dynamics, I think it's important to note the following fact. Just 3 days ago, there was a significant surge in Russian military activity across various sections of the front, including in the Pokrovsk direction. There are simply not enough resources right now for a serious increase in their activity on the battlefield. Pay attention, we are already hearing from our intelligence that the operational reserves the enemy was holding back to conduct. The fighting is happening right in Pokrovsk and in Mirnohrad itself. He is forced to throw everything into the war effort, because the previous forces and resources he used have literally been worn down in those absolutely ridiculous yet very costly local assaults.
Unsuccessfully, the Russian army is trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses in the Siversk direction. The FPV drone pilots in the armed forces of Ukraine, in turn, carried out targeted strikes on the enemy's positions and personnel, significantly complicating their ability to conduct further offensive actions. A storm column of Russian troops tried to break through the defenses of the Ukrainian military in the Donetsk region, but Ukrainian special forces destroyed the entire column and the personnel of the Russian occupiers. This was reported by the Operational Strategic Group of Troops Kortitsia. The enemy army was approaching the defensive fortifications of the Ukrainian warriors. However, the fighters of the 5th Separate Battalion of the National Guard's Special Operations Center, Omega, stopped them with precise mortar fire. The enemy's unsuccessful assault ended with 3 destroyed units of equipment and eliminated personnel. At the same time, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed a precision strike by the defense forces on strategic military and fuel energy infrastructure targets of the Russian Federation. As a result of a successful operation, the Iliski oil refinery in the Krasnodar region was hit. A large-scale fire has been recorded at the site. 2 more oil refineries, which provided fuel transportation for the needs of the Russian occupation forces, were also hit. In total, 20 out of 32 oil industry facilities in Russia have already sustained damage of varying degrees.
There are no chaotic attacks happening, and it seems like a systematic approach anywhere. No. Our drones are arriving at energy infrastructure sites, leading to a certain depletion of Russian military resources. Note that the series of attacks in the southern Russian Federation, including in the Krasnodar region, has actually led to a certain collapse. The collapse of the actions of the Russian army concentrated in the south of our country. When was the last time we heard about large-scale offensive actions in the south of Kherssonskaya or in the south of Zaporizhia region? Static pedicles are happening there. There is no talk of scaling up military actions.
This is how the USSR hits Russian soldiers who were advancing this time, even though they were actually retreating on motorcycles. To be continued.
Yes.
The so-called offensive, in fact, retreat actions were carried out by the occupying army in the Novopavlivka direction near Constantinople and Novokomar. It won't start. It won't start.
The decline in the VSK Autoprom's performance is primarily due to the fact that the Ukrainian Defense Forces have total superiority in FPV drones. Recently, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have been testing the use of FPV drones on Oktavolokne. These are secure communication channels that nullify the capabilities of Russian electronic warfare systems to suppress Ukrainian FPV drones.
This is precisely what is linked to the absence of heavy armored vehicles at the line of combat engagement.
Moreover, the Russians are afraid to bring heavy armored vehicles and weaponry within 5 kilometers of the line of combat engagement.
Nevertheless, the situation at the front still remains complicated.
It should be noted that the enemy has certain tactical successes, in the former Kurahivka direction. This is in the area of the settlements of Constantinople and Lakla, where the occupiers are trying to block the units of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Since the start of February 18th, there have been 122 combat clashes on the battlefield. Of these, 35 were in the Pokrovsk direction, and here the Ukrainian military is having success.
The Ukrainian Defense Forces have taken control of the settlement of Peshani. The strategic significance of this settlement, it is located 5 kilometers from Pokrovsk. Peshani is the largest coking coal deposit in the area of the settlement. There is a mining enterprise that, before the active phase of hostilities in this area, provided also support for Ukrainian heavy metallurgy at the moment of supplying the coking coal.
In addition, there is a noticeable pattern of counterattacks. In the area of Vodien too, fierce fighting is noted for the so-called industrial zone. In the Kupiansk direction, fighting is ongoing for Kupiansk-Uglovoy, the largest logistics hub of the armed forces of Ukraine. In addition, the occupiers are trying to push the Ukrainian defense forces along the Oskol River. This is already the Slovyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration.
Heavy fighting in Chasiv. Moreover, the Ukrainian defense forces are keeping almost the last neighborhood under control. It should be noted that the occupiers are trying to develop their tactical successes with the aim of directly reaching Konstantinovka.
This tactic will help the occupiers in the Turetsky direction, but in the Svatove direction, the armed forces of Ukraine are ahead. Who forces the Russians to rush ahead, they are also unsuccessfully landing troops in the Kherson direction, with the aim of dispersing Ukrainian forces. The armed forces of Ukraine are also having successes in Kursk. Russian propagandists are loudly proclaiming that the armed forces of Ukraine are supposedly amassing troops at the borders of the Kursk and Bryansk regions.
The occupiers celebrate the defeat of their column in the area of the settlement of Nikolskoye. Moreover, the fact is noted that North Korean servicemen refuse to participate in the evacuation activities of Russian servicemen who are blocked in this area.
High losses are reported both in personnel and in armored vehicles. However, the Russian leadership, as usual, finds this uninteresting. What is really interesting to Putin and his accomplices is creating an illusion of fear in the world. Surely Russia has deployed its forces in the Mediterranean and Black Seas for this purpose. 5 ships, 4 of which are carriers of caliber cruise missiles, with a total salvo of up to 30 missiles. Also last night there was a strike on the Russian-controlled base Khmeimim in Syria. In the attack the Russians blamed Israel, but who actually benefits from this? And we'll talk about many other things in the studio. That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to the next episode.